Hi there. So the past couple weeks, I think I'm going to start doing videos every other week. I still want to continue doing videos. And recently I've been studying more about Carl Rogers' theory. So Carl Rogers is person-centered therapy, and he really focused on, he's called a humanism, so he really focuses on humans. And a big part of his, so the first question I asked, is what is self-love, or the closest concept to it within this theory. So what I put was unconditional positive regard. So Rogers believed that in order for people to change, they needed unconditional positive regard. So in other words, like unconditional love. So no matter what behavior you've done in your life, having a person that has positive regard for you no matter what. And that doesn't mean excusing every behavior as okay. Murdering someone, not okay. Yelling at someone, not okay. And also having space to have positive regard for that person no matter where they are, what they did. And it's possible to tease out a person from the action they did and have space for both. So probably one of those gray areas of how do you recognize that someone did something wrong, or yourself, and also continue to love them and have positive regard for them. So what he talked about was, in order to show this, in order to have this, you need to remain warm and non-judgmental. So I was thinking about non-judgmentalness a lot, and he said it's very important to have this unconditional positive regard, because without that, people would be unable to change. That is one of the things that helps people make positive movement in their life. And he talks about how we judge ourselves and we have dissonance when so we have the idea of what we want to be and the reality of who we are, and like a Venn diagram, if they don't overlap very much, then we're going to feel really bad about who we are. But if there's greater overlap, then we will feel better about who we are. So I've actually was thinking a lot about that, and kind of thinking more about CBT and our cognitive distortions, and thinking, do my rules need to change, or do I need to change to have that greater overlap? And whether or not we overlap with our ideal selves or not, we need to have unconditional positive regard for who we are and being less judgmental. And I think part of the struggle with that, a lot of times when I hear people talking about being less judgmental, they talk about not knowing what's going on in that person's life. Oh, this person cut me off. Well, maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe there's something I don't know that I need to give space for, which I have issues with on its own. I'm like, no matter what's going on, even if they are a jerk, it doesn't give you the right to judge them. Like, maybe they are just cutting you off because that's who they have always been taught to be. I still think we can have positive regard and not say, oh, well, maybe they're having a bad day. Like, we can still be kind to people who are not kind to us, because we are capable of doing that. And I think sometimes with ourselves, we're like, well, I know everything. I know myself because I live with myself. I think recognizing how untrue that is. I'm also reading Dan Siegel's book, and he talks about explicit and implicit memory. And implicit memory is processed and stored unconsciously. Like, you do not recognize it's happening. Explicit memory is like, I am consciously aware that this memory is happening and is being stored. So some things that are happening in the background of our minds, implicit memory, we don't have access to that, and yet it rules and changes our behavior. So one of the things I've been thinking a lot about is what do I not know about my own behavior? And, maybe I'm just having a bad day. Maybe I've learned this skill from my parents and don't even recognize it. Or maybe I was treated poorly once and I'm replaying that over and over again. So giving myself a lot of grace that way. And making a list of things that I judge myself about, and recognizing too that accepting and working on my shadow, the work I've done with Jung, has also been really effective in developing more positive regard for myself. Because as I have my shame map, and I've created stories, and I've been discovering different characters that represent dark parts of myself within narratives and making stories. And it's amazing how those characters are a lot more relatable to and lovable in these stories, even though ultimately they have some really ugly parts about themselves. And especially things that I would consider for myself really dark. And being able to characterize them and see them, possessing just those attributes, and being able to interact with them, I'm like, oh, there's still some good parts about you, and you provide me with other things. So I think exploring my shadow self has really allowed me to have more unconditional positive regard, and exploring that safe, exploring those parts about me. And the unconditional positive regard can also make it safer to explore my shame self. Agreeing with myself that I'm not going to beat myself up and consider myself a horrible person and not worth loving anymore makes exploring my shadow and my dark side so much more accessible. Because I can repair with myself, and I can move forward when I discover, oh, I have this horrible dark desire inside of me. That makes it just more possible. Because I know I'm not going to run away and abandon myself and consider myself unworthy of living or unworthy of having happiness or life. So, yeah, that's my plug on unconditional positive regard. I feel like it's also this really recognizing the imperfection, striving for that. So learning about myself and trying to be non-judgmental, and recognizing that I'm not perfect and I'm going to make mistakes. And there is a lot that I can't control. Well, there are some things I can't control. So, striving really hard to make space for that as well. Yeah. And also on honoring the gray. I've been thinking about the land of honoring the gray a lot this week. I feel like there's a lot in life right now, particularly in the country, where gray is not being given space for. Everything is black and white. It's either good or bad. It's happy or sad. It's miserable or amazing. Or the country is, not worth anything, and we might as well give up. To no, the country is perfect, and we need to defend it. Instead of saying both, the country is messed up and it's worth working on. And lots of things have both. So finding space that I have good and bad in me. I have desirable traits and I have undesirable traits. And holding space for both of those things. And I think that's really helped with unconditional positive regard. Because it's not about denying the evil or only seeing the good. It's about embracing both and seeing that I have both. Anyways, that's all. Viv loves you.